From Amerivet Securities, a service-disabled, veteran-owned broker-dealer in New York City, we bring you Compass Check, a podcast created by veterans for veterans. The military uses a compass to navigate air, land, and sea. Now, Compass Check is here to help you navigate your transition into the corporate workforce. Our goal is to reach military veterans and members of the veteran community, empower and connect them with a multitude of resources that will ultimately set them up for success after leaving the military. I'm your host, Army veteran James Fitzgerald. Let's get moving. As the nation's leading veteran employment organization, Hire Heroes USA empowers U.S. military members, veterans, and military spouses to succeed in the civilian workforce. Hire Heroes USA offers personalized one-on-one coaching, professionally revised resumes, mentoring, workshops, a job board, career fairs, and more to tens of thousands of job-seeking veterans annually. With more than 65,000 confirmed hires, 40,000 jobs on its job board, and more than 1,400 volunteers, it is the country's most effective veteran employment nonprofit, enabling the military community to transfer their skill sets into successful civilian careers. My guest today is Hire Heroes USA Chief Operating Officer Ross Dickman. Here's our conversation. We are midway through 2023, but we're just getting started providing you the necessary support so you and your family can transition out of the military and into the corporate workforce. As all of us have learned during various stages of our time in the military, one of the most vital steps of mission preparation is checking your equipment, making sure that it's functional. So today, that's exactly what we're going to do in this episode of the Compass Check podcast. I have Ross Dickman, the Chief Operating Officer of Hire Heroes USA, here with me today to make sure that every piece of equipment in your arsenal is ready to fire whenever you need it. So with that being said, we're going to jump right into it. Ross, it is amazing to have you here with me today. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Compass Check podcast.
Thanks so much, James. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here with you.
The honor and pleasure is all mine. The listening and viewing audience has been hearing me time and time again talk about so much of this equipment inside of our tool bag, but it's a delight for me today to really have you here with us to do a layout of all that equipment and make sure it's serviceable and make sure that it's zeroed in for exactly what we need for our transition journey.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it.
We're going to jump right into it. Just to give people an idea of who you are, I'd like for you to give us a brief understanding of who you are and what you do for Hire Heroes USA.
Well, absolutely. So I'm Ross Dickman. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Hire Heroes USA. We are an employment services nonprofit serving veterans, transitioning military and military spouses, solely focused on empowering them to gain meaningful employment. What I run at Hire Heroes USA is I kind of describe it as any aspect of where one of those veterans or military spouses touches our system. So the kind of user or client experience, that's under my purview. Every aspect of the coaching model, the connection to systems, the support structures that they receive, as well as the business side of the operations. So our employee experience, and that's everything from the financials, human resources and people operations, organizational culture, our diversity and equity efforts. So it's a pretty big kit bag, but I have an amazing team of directors and managers and outstanding leaders throughout the organization that are fully committed to this mission of, empowering meaningful employment for veterans and military spouses.
What has been beneficial about each and every single episode of this podcast is not only have I been able to introduce the listening and viewing audience to great organizations that are there to support the veteran community, I've been able to introduce more veterans to my listening and viewing audience. So you're not just telling tales out of school, you're a veteran yourself, another strong Army veteran, my favorite branch. Can you give us just a small encapsulation of your military career, just so the listening and viewing audience has that side of you as well?
Yeah, I'm happy to and agree. Army's the best branch. It's not really competition. Um, yes, I grew up as a military brat. Actually,
Mm.
my dad served a career as an Army infantryman. My grandfather served in World War II and Korea. And on both sides of my family, actually, we have a long kind of legacy and history of military service that kind of ingrained in me this sort of seed and root of an identity that like, I really did want to serve the country, and I believe I still am serving the country through this work as well. Um, so it was sort of just kind of what I knew growing up. You
Mm.
know, we travel around, we move, we'd go to military bases, we'd attend like range days and all those cool things. And the idea started to coalesce. And I got introduced to West Point on kind of a ski trip thing and thought, this is the school I really want to go to. And I was extremely fortunate that that came together. I was able to attend West Point, and I was admittedly a very poor cadet. Um, my parents knew this about me too. They were like, "You can do it. It's whether you want to do it enough. Like, do you really want to do like make the hospital corners on your bed?" I was really bad at these kind of things. But I think it was an important learning process for me to kind of become the type of leader that the Army needs, is to go through some stuff that are a bit crucible moments to learn. So, graduated, had a chance to go into Army aviation. And that's where I really found myself. It really resonated with me. I loved being with soldiers. I loved doing the work as an aviator. I was thrilled to become an Apache helicopter pilot and be at a really, the forefront of an important mission, supporting the service member on the ground with close air support. I did 2 tours in Iraq as an Apache helicopter pilot, did, your normal officer roles and responsibilities. And then had a really nice kind of buttressing end to my career of going back to West Point and being in charge of cadet leader development, um, working at the Center for Professional Military Ethics. It was really funny because classmates of mine and friends and people that knew me as a cadet were like, "You're a terrible cadet. Why are you going back there to be in charge of cadets?" I always said, "I'm exactly who you want to go there," because I was such a bad cadet that I know the difference between kind of youthful exuberance and poor ethical behavior. And you need a bit of that fire and passion in the young men and women that are going out to lead in the military, and how to harness and funnel that creativity into the best pursuit of, supporting the national defense and supporting those soldiers and taking care of them. And it was awesome. It was a great place to end my career from.
A lot of the purpose behind this podcast is also to demystify a little of the mythos behind military service. Not everyone has that cookie cutter experience where it's wine and roses and everything works out on both sides of the corn,
Mhm.
both sides of the railroad tracks in the officer corps and on the enlisted side. There's a myriad of different experiences that influence good and bad. And just listening to yours, I think that is the kind of journey that our listening and viewing audience needs to hear, because a lot of them can fit into that same category of not having the stereotypical experience, but still needing to go through the same transition process and finding themselves, finding that purpose and where they belong in their professional world. It's a delight to hear such a delightful experience that you've had overall, but being able to do it in such a colorful way. So thank you for sharing all that with us, but thank you for your service as well overseas. I always want to acknowledge the deployment pattern of our military, because that really did place a lot of us in extreme positions, but it gave us this level of experience that we couldn't have gotten anyplace else. So bringing that to the corporate workforce is yet again what this podcast is all about. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to continue to dive a little bit deeper into that if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's go for
Because
it.
I'd like to ask,
you don't have to talk about like the time where you were a bad cadet, but like what were some of the skills and maybe qualities that you think you gained during your time in the military?
Yeah. I think the key one for me, probably the core one, was helping me understand my learning agility and like the way that I go about iterative learning. Um, the military forces you to be comfortable in the uncomfortable
Mm,
and build a systemic process for yourself around learning new skills, adapting to challenging environments. Um, you know, there's military structure to that. You know, you might change jobs every 18 months or something along those lines. But as an individual leader and as an individual contributor in an organization, you know, that might mean a new challenge, a new project comes on your desk, something changes, your boss changes, your organization gets acquired by another. And how do you adapt to that stuff? I think learning agility is one of the things that the military really coaxed out of me and gave me a chance to thrive with. I always had the ability to be really focused and dialed in on stuff. Like I was a very avid reader I still am, and I have this ability to sort of turn off all other sensory inputs if I'm really engaged in something. But the military helped me use that as a positive to really add discipline to that. So it wouldn't just be, you know, I'm captivated by some video game or something like as a youth. And instead, I'm captivated by what I need to do to drive this mission to completion. So like adding discipline to that was one of the things I think the military really added for me. Um, you know, as an Apache pilot, you know, we'd have a mission set when we'd launch out every day, and then you know when we'd be deployed, kind of all hell might break loose, and sometimes it didn't, and so sometimes you do the missions as planned, and sometimes you just respond to one troops in contact after another and be bouncing all over Baghdad, you know, putting out fires basically. And I think what the military helped me do through that kind of experience was how to filter noise and focus on what's the core place that I need to be as a leader to affect, you know, positive outcomes, change, or whatever. Filtering through that noise and addressing the most crucial need was a skill that I really gained from my time as an Apache pilot, and probably, well, not the last. I guess I don't only have core skills, but um, I guess the last one I'd say that really stands out to me in the work that I do now and as a working in business is this sort of finish the race mentality.
mm.
Like I don't leave anything half done. Um, uh, at times that annoys my wife, you know, like it bleeds into all aspects of my life. If I'm drinking a beer that I really don't enjoy, I will just finish it because I don't, you know, I don't leave anything
Mm,
half done.
mm.
Or watching a movie that we hate and I will finish it because we're going to figure out what happens at the end of this race. But in business and in the military, that persistence and fortitude, I think, is something that is extremely valuable. And the military gave me a place to hone that and really learn that in a way that I think, um, I don't know, I've found nothing but positive gains from having that type of mentality.
One thing that I heard time and time again while you were just speaking is your family, your wife. Um, I'd like for you to give one piece of advice to our listening and viewing audience for those that have the family component as they begin their transition process. Was there something that you learned during your own transition with your family, or something that you wish you had known as you transition out of the military with your family?
I would say absolutely. They know you probably better than you in a way from the lens that they view you through is a really powerful tool to help you present yourself after the military. This is something that my wife helped me with when I was leaving the army. I was, you know, I was scared, nervous. I didn't know what was happening. It took longer than I thought it was. You know, at some points I was, you know, desperation interviewing kind of stuff,
Mm,
you know, and just kind of trying to throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And she was one of those people that was telling me, like, here's where you are uniquely good. Here's where your skills are. Here's what I see from you and not in a way to like pump up your ego, but you really got to ask your family these kind of questions. Ask your close friends and your peers, the people that you know you can get hard feedback from with love and care. Because when you're interviewing, it really is about those unique skills that you're going to be able to bring and leverage. And your family sees that from you all the time. The way you handle stress, the way you manage anxiety, like you don't have to create a solution around that. You tap into those resources and those people that know you best to help give you that unfiltered, honest advice that helps you present yourself in the right light, in the positive and the accurate light to any employer or network connection or kind of whomever you meet out there. That was probably the most important thing that my family gave for me, was that unfiltered feedback.
Wow. That was beautiful. I think that's the perfect transition point to talk about another resource that's available that can give that honest feedback and give that additional preparation after getting to know the veteran and all the skills they can bring to the table. So let's move into Hire Heroes USA. Let's talk about what that overall process looks like for a veteran that's ready to transition. I'm reaching out, I get connected to you, pick it up from there, walk me through it.
Yeah. So first, our entire approach is hinged on personalized care. My team hears me say this a lot, but I'm a maybe aggressive pursuant of quality of care. It's one of the terms from the healthcare industry that I think resonates as social services and employment care. Quality matters. And we have figured out and determined that one-on-one personalized coaching achieves the highest quality for that veteran or military spouse that is struggling through an employment transition or wants to make a transition. You know, they're in a job where they don't feel satisfied or something along those lines. You know, personalized care provides you a coach in your corner who gives you non-attributional feedback, advice, resource connection, everything that you need. But like, you can have those hard conversations without wondering, was that going to get back to my boss? Or what does that mean? Or, oh, I screwed up on an interview. Who can I talk to that understands this, but is going to give me the advice that helps me move forward positively? And that's how we built this transition specialist model that we call it. So you sign up for help with Hire Heroes USA. We ask that people complete a registration process that helps inform that coaching experience. You know, the better informed that coach is, the better informed the coaching is going to be, the better outcomes everybody's going to have from that. From there, it's filtered based on a variety of things. You know, we do prioritize those with the most urgent care needs at Hire Heroes USA. And that's something a lot of people don't know. And some organizations do the opposite. They prioritize, you know, those who can get jobs the fastest or things like that. We prioritize if you're unemployed, if you are underemployed, if you've had long gaps or where you're out of the labor market or things like that, or major barriers, we prioritize care to those individuals because they need the most personalized care. We try to serve everyone that signs up for help, but we do sometimes have to triage a bit to say, you know, we don't have the capacity to serve you with quality this week. So next week, you're first in the chute. From there, though, you get partnered based off of that registration process and your unique care situation and need to a transition specialist. And that's a team member on our team who provides that free counsel, advice, coaching, all of that one-on-one, as much as you need, as long as you need. If, you know, it is very peer-to-peer, individualized care system informed by a really rigorous measurement and evaluation process that's running on the back end behind it. So while you as the veteran are just experiencing like, hey, James is my transition specialist on the phone, I call him up. He is there. We talk through what's happening. He connects me for a mock interview. He got me into this course where I can get a certification that I need. Oh, he let me know about this employer is doing some hiring actions. There's a virtual career fair here. and you can call as much as you want or text as much as you want, or, very adaptable around the communication style each
Nice.
veteran needs. Um, that's what you experience as the veteran. Is James is your person right there. What's happening behind that is a bunch of system inputs and processes that are saying, hey, James, uh, this client of yours, this veteran, said they're interested in this type of work. This employer is coming in and searching for these types of roles. Send these to them. Also, look at this. Like, all of that happens. So we're trying to capitalize and align the big informed system with high quality personalized interventions. And I think that's really what makes a difference for ours is it's personal with all of that employer connections and virtual support offerings and certifications and skills-based matching that's running on the back end to help support that personalized care.
And it's also including the household unit because this support is also available to military spouses.
Correct.
Like
We have a
those
special
things come into play as well when veterans are talking about their transition journey, their transition goals, where it is that they would ultimately like to end up. What is their end result? The family unit plays into that. So Hire Heroes USA is doing the extreme service of including that inside of the operation. So it's great to have you on for this episode when we're really trying to hone in on not only the arsenal of equipment that we have, but also the unit, the team that's going to be walking this journey.
Oh, you nailed it. I mean, the military spouse support systems are crucial, right? And they face their own unique challenges as far as accessibility in the labor market, role types and role mobility, access to childcare, and there's a host of challenges that military spouses face that are unique to their needs. And so we broke out even a specialized team of just military spouses to add even more peer-to-peer capability to that. That's led by an outstanding military spouse. And, what we've seen from that is, we're able to get about 1,000 military spouses into new jobs in a calendar year. And that's got such a powerful effect on family sustainability and like generational potential too, right? Like, think about this a lot, which is the capability of a military family after transition to like build wealth, not just like work and make ends meet, but build wealth and take care of their family. That comes from putting really rigorous systems of support behind what each of those unique family members need.
It really is an expansion of the opportunities that the military can offer. And the veteran community is one of the largest recruitment tools of the military. So making sure that our veteran community has robust access to opportunity and robust success models that they're able to follow will ensure that we always have that strong all volunteer force in the United States of America. So it would behoove us, to use an old Army slang term, it would behoove us to continue making strides in this area to support the entire family unit in the same ways that we've stereotypically thought about supporting the veteran community. So I do want to continue on that line because when we talk about success stories in the veteran community, I think we also have to include military spouses. So I want to give you an opportunity, if there are any success stories that you'd like to highlight specific with Hire Heroes USA, I'd like to give you an opportunity to really give our listening and viewing audience an understanding of what success can look like, knowing that it's different for everyone.
You nailed it, right? Like, success is different for everyone. We really emphasize success is driven by meaningful employment. And what we mean by that is sustainable livelihood. So like, equitable or fair pay for their work, their skills, and the rest. Opportunities for economic mobility. Some individuals want to go in and lead a Fortune 50 organization, and others want to deliver as an individual contributor. Like, plenty of people retire and go, I've led enough in the Army. I want to just do the thing I love to. Awesome. Like, the opportunity though for economic mobility is what we want to make sure that you have that access. And we want to make sure that we would drive positive outcomes in the workforce. So, like getting veterans and military spouses into the labor market increases the earning power of the organizations, as well as for that family. Opportunities for advancement in the community. Having an engaged veteran and military spouse workforce improves communities and it improves those families, improves their potential for longevity and the rest. So when I think about like how do we measure that kind of personalized success, we had this junior enlisted service member who got out as an E4 and struggled for a while to really find the right role for himself. He was bouncing around in a variety of careers, doing a lot of manual labor that wasn't, he wasn't finding fulfillment in it, and he was encountering a lot of physical challenges in it as well. And then almost encountered a workplace accident that could have been, pretty fatal. And he thought, I've been laying kind of pipe basically and laying cable that supports IT works and these, kind of server farms. And I want to be doing that. And I didn't have any of the skills or knowledge, didn't know where to start, and just kind of signed up for help. And he had an outstanding transition specialist that took the time to really unpack that story with him, dive into it, and get to, okay, well, if you want to move from here to there, let's set this roadmap out. And I need you to be committed to it though, because moving from here to there isn't as simple as like submit a resume to a job board and boom, you're hired, as a help desk supervisor. You've got to go through some training. You've got to get some certifications. You've got to network appropriately. And over like an 18-month interaction and coaching support, like got him connected to the right certifications. He took those courses, got him involved in more, IT networking. Over that time, that job coach was like always there, putting the right positive application of pressure, the right feedback, helping him with the right mock interviewing. I've just told his story in my words and probably butchered it, right? But helping him tell that story in a way that an employer goes like, man, I see your resilience. I see your drive and passion. I see how day one, you show up here, you make a difference on our bottom line. And sure enough, he's doing IT work now, making great pay and feeling so much more purposeful in his work that like, it makes me kind of smile to think like, man, like I want every veteran and military spouse to have that type of work where what the work is looks different to each person, but how they feel about that and how that changes their behavior and their interaction in their community and the way that people see them as veterans is truly powerful.
Upward mobility used to be the definition of the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
Decades ago, that used to be what people would seek out when they're looking for generational goals. I want my children to do better than me.
Yes.
And like so on and so forth. I think we've switched that mentality of upward mobility for get rich or die trying, which each have their pros and cons, but I think we've gotten away from those milestones that we can get to generationally, those generational curses that we can break through our tenacity in the professional arena. But we also want to underscore some of the new obstacles that these generations have to face that maybe past generations didn't have to face at scale.
Yeah.
One of them that are relatively new in the U.S., opportunity deserts, especially when it comes to employment.
Yes.
Military veterans, after they transition, have a handful of locations that they usually lay down roots in. Either it's close to the base of their last duty station, where they came from, or wherever the nearest opportunity is. Those are the three locations that they'll go to.
Correct.
You have certain individuals that go back home that run into these opportunity deserts. They don't have as much ability to tap into those high-paying jobs, to get those credentials, to have educational advancement opportunities in their area. And that's something that they really have to examine when it comes to their plan as they transition out of the military. And I know that Me and you have discussed that previously in our conversations of how can we help veterans that are in these rural areas that don't have a lot of opportunity get connected to these employment opportunities that can advance their life. I'd love to hear any thoughts you have on how veterans can set themselves up so they're not in these opportunity deserts.
Yeah, I think like a really rigorous self-examination is a key leading factor of that, and looking at kind of good understanding of yourself and good understanding of the marketplace, and then diving into that location analysis, right? Because everything's about overlaps to me, right? Like the right job for an individual isn't just a function of their skill set. It's also a function of kind of what do they like to do, what kind of mobility do they want, do they want to move up or down, and then you're looking at that overlap to say like, okay, now let's start to look at the economic disbursement of opportunity throughout the United States. And when you figured out those types of roles that are right for you, now you're looking at where are they concentrated, or are they remote accessible or not. There is a lot, I think, of kind of dual pressure on industry right now around remote access for jobs. Some roles require you to be on the road a lot. Other roles, there's an expectation of in office. I think that we're kind of, I don't know if we're post COVID or not. James, you and I are doing this on like Zoom.
Technically, CNN says so. So I'm going, yeah.
We'll call it post COVID. So the boom and like explosion of remote access for like pretty much most role types is kind of now drawing back to people are doing a more rigorous analysis of that to say within the skills I need in this job and within the tasks I need this job to perform, how much of that has to be done in an office or on a job site location or can be done on any laptop anywhere. And that is hopefully going to create new veins of opportunity where tapping into your right skills presentation and being able to kind of hit the right points on remote accessibility of the role will open up some of those deserts. But also, I think there's a few industries that have placement opportunity in some of those areas that we don't see, that veterans aren't as represented in. Hospitality industry, service industry, I think as well, like there's such a draw towards entrepreneurship in the veteran and military spouse community that like looking at some of those spaces and saying, well, what's a community needs analysis here? Before I launch out another vape shop, what's my unique skill set to be an entrepreneur? And can I bring opportunity actually to this area? And maybe not just set myself and my family up for success and drive a new venture, but like engage this community in new role types and new access. Like, I think there's a bunch of ways that intersects. But I mean, you nailed it, right? The old models aren't really existing anymore. There's not many folks that start at the lowest, job in a mailroom at a corporation and stay there for 30 years and are the chairman of the board anymore. Like that's just, mobility happens nowadays in the employment market. And as veterans, I think that's a strength, like learning how to tap into your innate capability to learn on the fly and go into new markets and kind of drive collaboration in a space where others aren't, opens up some of those deserts.
And all of us, or I'll say the vast majority of military personnel, have that baked into their resume off the bat, where you've transitioned to various locations, worked in high stress environments for a variety of different leadership channels, but been able to consistently perform.
Mm-hmm.
We all have that. It's just like, oh, I really want to jump into the resume piece, but I'm going to jump right into something that you laid out for me, which is industry. I think we really need to do a lot of self-examination. I was in combat arms in the infantry. Mm-hmm. I can't look at many infantry industries out in the civilian sector because they don't exist. So I have to really do a self-examination of what industry do I see myself best serving in, and how do I find what position inside of the industry best suits my skills, attributes, and characteristics.
Yes.
So Exactly to your point. I work in financial services, which is underrepresented by the veteran community, especially when it comes to our women veterans. The largest growing population of our veteran community and active duty component, we're struggling on cracking the code on how to bring those individuals in, and many other sectors are facing those same challenges. And it's not necessarily that the opportunities aren't there, it's connecting them with the veterans that are best suited for those opportunities. How do
Yes.
we send the smoke signal? How do we put up the billboard? How do we send the email to let them know we want you? Your skill set is perfect for it, but we have to convince the veteran
Yeah. Yeah.
that you are worthy.
You nailed it, right? Like, how do you build those skill pathways that you're an infantryman? I've flew Apaches. I'd say this sometimes, like by some measures of like employability, I'm pretty unemployable because the military trained me in one sense to, you know, moderately capably fly an Apache and put missiles in this stuff, right? Like I was not I'm no Top Gun, but I was a decent enough pilot and I think a decent enough leader. Um, there's not many Fortune 500 organizations that need me to shoot Hellfire missiles into stuff. I'm sure there's a few that would love it if I was able to launch those into
Yeah,
competitors,
have a
but
great budget if they
what
can
a great,
afford
yeah.
that.
So it's all about like, well, within that context, like what skills are actually being represented there and going deeper to then build those pathways of connection. And I think that's a struggle for, when the recognition of veteran unemployment happened, like 15 years ago, there's a big push on it from like a social cause, from a national responsibility that then kind of moved into like, hey, there's economic opportunity on this too. There's corporate opportunity. There's skills that veterans bring to the marketplace that, have been shown to kind of increase the profitability of an organization. They stay longer, they contribute to the mission, they want to rise up and be upwardly mobile. And all of those things contribute to like a healthy corporate learning environment and healthy pathways for veterans. Like we can't keep using old solutions for new problems. And what's come to light is like, while we have got a lot more veterans into jobs, underemployment of veterans is continuing to increase. Veterans are out of the labor market at rates much higher than their civilian peers. And when you dig into those details a bit, it roots around skills recognition, like feeling like their skills aren't being leveraged appropriately, that they're not being, that there's not equitable pay for how their skills present in the workplace, or like marginalized workers who are veterans who are saying, I'm not seeing where I fit in this economy. And so why try? And that speaks to, education, both at the corporate level, education of the veteran, and rigorous work on, getting more nuanced on, okay, I could pull the trigger and shoot a missile off of the rails of a Hellfire or off the rails of an Apache. But like, what skills am I actually using on there, from like evaluation, problem solving, like making risk-based decisions? Like there's so much that goes into that one tangible task, and moving from tasks to skills-based work, incorporating into that the person's competencies, their potential, their desire for growth, and changing the way we hire, I think opens up more of those pathways for women veterans, for minority veterans, for other underserved communities of the veteran and military spouse population. Foreign-born military spouses have unique challenges as well. And like, they bring so many skills that have run into barrier after barrier of recognition. How can we get those barriers down? Because everybody gains. Like the corporation gets a right employee, that veteran or military spouse is working in a place where they're valued, where their skills are put to work, the family gains, the community gains. I do think it makes the professional choice to serve in the military or support the military a lot more viable of a pathway for a young American that's trying to figure out, how can I learn where I fit in this country and serve? The military is a great place to do that, but how that is connected to them is a bit lost right now.
And that plays directly into the next item I'd like to bring up, which is the resume. which is, what gets your foot in the door. And exactly to our vein of conversation right now, I think a lot of veterans do themselves a disservice by not really leaning into the resume building process and exemplifying all their experiences and knowledge and skill sets that they've acquired during their time in the military to really showcase to these organizations the benefit that they bring, but also why these organizations need them.
Mm-hmm.
The resume, going back to a phrase you had mentioned earlier, old solutions for new problems. We have algorithms that are sorting through these resumes nowadays. So we can't just be the Joe Schmo or Jane Schmo that's making a generic resume thinking that's going to get us in the door. It's not. There's something objective that's looking for key phrases
Mm-hmm.
that will put your resume in front of that recruiter. So we have to use new solutions for these new problems. How do I make sure that my resume is not just tailored for this position, but it's able to be tailored for this algorithm that's going to pick it up?
Yeah, you've nailed it. I mean, applicant tracking systems are kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of solution, right? Like, and on one hand, you can't expect a recruiter to sift through hundreds or thousands of applicants for a single role. And on the other hand, like, if you're the person applying for that job, you really want them to. I want you to read this stuff. I put time and energy into it. I'm put myself on the plate there. I think it's one of the most important things in a resume is it's authentic and accurate, right? Like, we do a collaborative building of the resume with the veteran we serve at Hire Heroes USA. So your transition specialist is the resume expert, but we don't want to just build that resume in a vacuum, send it over to someone and go, there you go, it's tailored, fire it off. Because if you get an interview off of that resume, which is the desired next step, right, is it gets you into at least the screening interview. One of the most common questions is like, take me through your resume. Well, if you can't speak to it, you're not going to move on in that, because now how do they know if that's authentically you? There's a lot of what I've seen sort of like off the shelf approaches to try and beat the applicant tracking system. I think you got to optimize for it, quite frankly. You do need to have a certain percentage of your resume that does have correlationary words to the job posting. It needs to be really rigorously matched to that, while being a true representation of your skills and competencies and what you bring to the table. But at its core, like, your resume is a part of the tool system, but not the thing that ever gets you the job. The thing that gets you the job is your interaction with those people that would be your peers, your supervisors, or sometimes your direct reports. And that comes from practice, experience, and a willingness to put yourself out there through like interview practice, informational interviews, networking, presence, not being a nuisance on it, but being willing to engage in that type of proactive networking so that, yes, your resume is in on that applicant tracking system, but that's because it has to be. And really, you've already networked enough that the people who are hiring are knowing, like, okay, this person is someone we really want to get in that room because we want to learn more about them. And that has to come from multiple points of entry. And I think networking is one of your most powerful tools on that.
I've been teasing this, but I want to make sure that the listening and viewing audience know where to find this amazing organization to help with all the things that we're discussing right now. HireHeroesUSA.org is where you can go to find more information about every single bit of what we're talking about, but also get yourself situated so you can get signed up for some of these amazing resources and services to aid you along your transition journey. But don't worry, I still have Ross for a little bit longer, and I'm going to take him to task on some of the things that will be beneficial for each and every single one of you that are listening, because now we're going to be moving into more of a scenario type, so a dream sequence style questioning of Ross, because some of you are at different points of your transition journey. And I just like to get a 30,000 foot view of what some of the broad strokes, the wave tops of someone that has maybe 1 year before they're fully transitioned out or maybe even 6 months before they're fully transitioned out? What will be some good steps, some best practices, or pieces of advice that you would recommend to these service members?
So first would go to the website that James mentioned, hireheroesusa.org, register, sign up. I think at any point in your transition journey, whether you're like dipping your toe in the water to figure out if it's right for you, or if like you have a unexpected departure from the military because of whatever issue, and suddenly you find yourself with 2 months or 1 month or 2 weeks before you have to be out there finding a new job. Personalized care always supports it. It's one of the most powerful tools to help you kind of move on in that journey. But if you're a year out, I think you're right in the crux of that time where some of the hard and heavy lifting around kind of analyzing yourself and your skill sets, evaluating, your unique competencies and capability for growth, and asking yourself some really reflective questions around like, what work do I actually enjoy doing, and looking for those overlaps. You're through all of that ideally by then. You have a bit of an informed picture around like, this is the unique value that I provide in terms of a skill or competency area. And this is the stuff I love doing. And that you can speak to that effectively, because at 1 year out, you get the question a lot of like, well, what do you want to do? And that's a tough question to answer if you haven't done that reflection. Veterans have a tendency at times to be really broad on that. Well, I can do anything. I have done anything. Almost useless to a hiring employee.
Yeah.
They're not hiring jacks of all trades. They're hiring someone for a role. And they like if that's a person that can be adaptable and grow into new roles, but they don't hire off of that choice. They hire off what you can do on day 0 or day 1 in that job. So at 1 year, you should be through that point, and you should be really getting into now, you've done some of that work around what do those roles potentially look like, and you're kind of driving into exploratory interviewing, right? You're not hireable yet. You have a year. Nobody's hiring a year out unless you're finishing, an MBA internship and you have sort of an offer on the table for after you graduated. But you can be really driving your network in that time by having conversations, accessing touch points, whether it's veterans or just, being present at your local Chamber of Commerce events or whatever else, and building your network of people who start to understand you and your skills and are willing to help you analyze what industries and role types those skills fit in with, so that as you get closer to that 6-month mark and you're now through some of that exploratory interviewing and you've practiced enough of like talking about yourself, that if you do meet someone and say, tell me what you do, that it's not just the deer in the headlights look, or, you're able to talk about what you've done in the military to what you want to do next now that you're preparing for your departure. Because in that 6-month mark, it really is getting narrow and focused on these are the specifics of roles, companies, industries, and locations that I am aiming for, and I am narrowly targeting my pathways now. That runs risk, right? Too narrow too soon, and you might cut yourself off of opportunities or whatever. So I caveat that to say still a bit of yes to everything, or like don't say no to a job you haven't been offered yet. But definitely at that point, your path that you're targeting should be quite clear. And you're going, okay, I really want to work at AmeriVet Securities. And I know they have a really robust and rigorous veteran hiring process. Okay, I'm looking at what events they're going to be at. I'm looking at what activations they're doing. I'm going to be present there. I've reached out to a couple of people on LinkedIn, and I feel like I've been an annoying kind of fly in the ointment there because I'm not getting responses. So I'm going to show up at an event they're doing, or I'm going to listen in on a webinar they're doing. James posted something. I'm going to comment on that about how did that make me feel? How did I reflect on that? Because you want that when that person then is applying, that they are looking at you with a positive light. So like building your network in that way, getting really, really focused, and activating all the appropriate resourcing for you to get your resume in front of the right people at the right times. Now that could be traditional hiring practices. You're launching on job boards. Those have generally low success ratings, but there still is success ratings on those. So like, don't shy away from them. Just be thoughtful and intentional about it. If you're launching out 1,000 resumes on a job board and not hearing anything back, that method is not working for you. But there's opportunities for kind of corporate placement. There's opportunities for sourcing and matching and career fairs and things like that all got to be part of your like fully complete ecosystem picture of the ways you're engaging. Really specific to say at that point, as you're nearing in and you're definitely closer in than 6 months, and someone says, what do you want to do? You should be able to speak coherently and effectively to that around like, these are the skills that I bring. I think that I would be well served in this kind of a role in this type of a company. These are a few spotlight companies where I see my skills would be really valuable. I know I went on a bit long there. I would just say one of the tendencies that veterans have, especially, is like, we start broad and then go narrow. And that can bite you sometimes if you stay too broad too long. I've lost interviews in the past where somebody said, well, where do you want to live? Those kind of things. And I would say, well, I lived anywhere in the Army. I even, found it, I even made it work living in Alabama. Like, I can live anywhere. And had a hiring manager. Well, I'm from Alabama. So what do you mean? And nobody's hiring for everywhere. Nobody's hiring for someone can do anything. They're hiring at a place for you to do a thing. Bring your skills.
It's a good characteristic to be decisive as well.
Yes.
To be able to make a decision. That was one of the core tenets of my time as a non-commissioned officer. It's like, one of the best things you can do is make the right decision. The second best thing you can do is make the wrong decision. The absolute worst thing you can do is make no decision at all. So just making sure that you're taking action with all the information you have available. It's like that's the best service that you can do for yourself. But it's also one of those things that if we don't broaden our view of resources, yes, when it comes to our network, I constantly have to remind veterans that you have a whole network of active duty personnel that you served with, that you can tap back into. See if they can help aid whatever network search that you're currently engaged in. You don't know who you served with, who they're related to, who they're friends with. Yes. That is another tool in your arsenal that you can utilize. Make sure you keep your powder dry. Once you take off the uniform, doesn't mean that you take off all those people from your contact list.
Yes.
Those are ways that you can strengthen the foundation of your transition out of the military and into the corporate workforce, is continuing to utilize those resources and not cut yourself short, especially cutting yourself short too soon.
Oh yeah. You nailed it. Like, I think like the military forces you to compare yourself to others all the time. Like, I think that's a powerful thing. I think it's a great thing to be competitive in that way. We wear our flair on our uniforms. There's promotion boards and, Soldier of the Month and Soldier of the Quarter boards and all that stuff. Those are awesome tools to build competitiveness and proficiency and competence. And I think that there's some group of veterans who struggle then because that inherent competitiveness means that they're looking back at their peers through, they've been successful and I'm not. They didn't struggle in the transition and I am. Well, they found a job and I haven't. And I don't want to now be under them or seem less than them. And the truth is, every person leaving the military has struggled with something in some way. If they found a job right away, they might not have ever moved from the military brain to the corporate brain. And they had some struggles while in that job, or it was the wrong job for them. Or, other stuff happens. Like, it's a complete life change, though. And so I encourage any veteran, any military spouse who is like kind of looking at their struggles through the lens of where someone else has been successful and using that to kind of suppress or stop themselves from taking action, is to invert that on its head. Ask them the how question. hey, how did you manage that? What did you use? Where did you go? Like, dig into those questions with a curious mindset, because they are your peers and support system. They care about you too. Like, anyone that you served with will take the time of day to give you advice, support. Like, that is just inherent in the brotherhood and sisterhood of arms.
I'm going to test it out right now. Would you mind if the listening and viewing audience connected with you on LinkedIn?
I would be thrilled. There's only like 2 Ross Dickmans on LinkedIn. One of them's a weatherman and the other's me. So you got a 50-50 shot. The weatherman seems like a nice guy too, so he will probably help as well, but absolutely.
If you go with the weatherman, you're going to get cloudy skies with an 80% chance of rain. So make sure you choose wisely. The last part that I'd like to touch on, is there any upcoming events, announcements, projects, anything of that nature that our listening and viewing audience can take part in with Hire Heroes USA?
Absolutely. So first is we're always, we have a constant open sign up portal, and on a week to week, you get matched with a transition specialist for support. So at any time, if you want to make a career transition or whatever, is sign up and register. We've got a couple of different webinars and events coming up over the next few days. Later in July, we have an event focused on junior enlisted service members on building career connections. That's on the 27th of June. And then one for military spouses as well, coming up on the 11th of July. Again, focused on building career connections. We've got a spotlight coming up, a webinar spotlight on employers, where employers are sharing techniques with you on how to access careers within their organization and how to network appropriately. The next one coming up is with Amazon on the 12th of July. And then we do once a quarter, a big virtual career fair of bringing in all the employers that we work with and any veteran that wants to access and engage in a really easy networking session that has led to a lot of interviews and hires. So we're doing a virtual career fair on August 17th, and I encourage everyone to sign up for that. Lastly is just, stay active in the networking. Like it's a constant type of effort system, but that effort has big return for you.
Well, we have a lot on our plate to gobble up, but what I want to say is a humongous thank you to you for showing up today as we laid out our equipment and we did some inspections to make sure it's functional and it's serviceable and it's zeroed in on our target as we transition out of the military and into the corporate workforce with not just the service member, but also the family. So Ross, thank you so much. Every single bit of what you put out today is exactly what we needed for this episode of Compass Check.
Thanks so much, James. Thanks for your service to the country and your continued service at AmeriVet Securities and through Compass Check and all the work that you are doing to support, the national defense, our military veterans and military spouses. And it's a real honor to be here with you today.
It is my pleasure. And with that, we're going to close this episode and this leg of your journey transitioning out of the military with your family and into the corporate workforce. I've been your host, Army veteran James Fitzgerald. Until the next time.
Thank you for listening to Compass Check with AmeriVet Securities. I've been your host, James Fitzgerald. See you next time.